Welcome to Conversations with My Sister's Keepers, where we bring awareness, share stories, and promote healing-centered conversations for lived experience professionals and allies in the gender-based violence and recovery sectors. I'm Shameen Brown, and together we'll explore strategies, resources, and insights to support wellness, recovery, and leadership. Join us as we challenge stigma, celebrate autonomy, and normalize the healing journey. Let's build a community of understanding and empowerment, one conversation at a time.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for joining us for Conversations with My Sister's Keepers. Today, we're here with my sister's keeper, Leah McSpadden. Leah is a law student and lived experience expert, committed to advocating for survivors of domestic violence and human trafficking. She actively supports organizations such as Women at the Center, Kids Help Phone, and StatuteFinder.org, while also volunteering as an advocate within justice and education institutions. As the founder of the nonprofit Voice for the Silent, Leah works to educate communities on the psychological impact of human trafficking, as well as raise public awareness on these issues. With plans to further her impact after completing her legal studies, she intends to use her legal expertise to advocate for survivors within the justice system and create mentorship programs for youth. Leah is committed to amplifying the voices of those who need support and fighting for systemic change to ensure a safer, more just society. Welcome, Leah. It's lovely to have you with us.
Thank you so much. It's nice to have your time, and I'm happy to be here.
Conversations with My Sister's Keepers are crucial for survivors and survivor leaders everywhere. It's time to advance beyond trauma-informed and resilience-based narratives of surviving, thriving, and leading, and embrace a healing-centered focus on wellness and recovery. So today, we aim to challenge the stigma and judgment that many survivors encounter during their healing process. By sharing insights into our own recovery and wellness journeys, I believe we can normalize the ongoing and cyclical nature of this recovery experience. What do you think?
I think that ending stigma is one of the biggest things we need to overcome in order to create change. When people dumb down survivors to just tokens of sensationalized trauma, we miss the point that they can overcome. They matter. They are someone. And even if that journey is not being an advocate or outspoken, whatever their journey is just equally as important. And when we reduce people to a meme or a label, we forget that they're multifaceted people.
Yeah. When you were talking, when you were saying reduced to, and you were looking for a word there, I wanted to say, trauma.
I say that
often. That's something that happens for us in this lived experience professionalism journey, is especially initially can feel like your identity is being reduced to your trauma.
I started telling my story for people to see it's real. You're not a bad person. Life happens. Everyone goes through something. But even when I was struggling to say that, it's because on a recovery journey, sometimes the words fail you. I wanted to be a lawyer my whole life. Words are my jam, so to say. But when I talk about this, the words fail me. And that's really telling of how hard it is to overcome this struggle and why wellness and lived experience are very important. I believe that to be true.
Yeah. We were talking about the goals of the Canadian G100 anti-human trafficking wing earlier, which are to promote lived experience leadership and autonomy, support wellness of lived experience staff, develop survivor-led, informed, and facilitated prevention and intervention programs, and identify ally organizations that are invested in survivor leadership. So when you hear these goals, what are your thoughts around some of the gaps or barriers that exist with them, but also strengths or things to consider? Really just any thoughts that you might have.
Because I come from legal perspective or education perspective, I agree with survivor-led informed prevention, particularly because I was 17 when this happened, and intervention to prevent. But what I love about the G100 goals are support wellness of lived experience staff. Because along the way, I have found that it is very easy to forget yourself, to get burnt out, to get vicarious trauma while you're helping other people, this, that, thing, the other. And I really appreciate that being highlighted more than just lived experience, the stories alone.
Just would like to invite you to introduce your lived experience, any parts of it that you want folks to know.
My life was never easy. It was always about abuse and trauma. That is what made me vulnerable to the situation. But what is more important to highlight is the strength that I have and the strength that other survivors have. And the fact that we need to focus on what's next, not on what happened.
Mm-hmm. I do believe there's a lot of value in lived experience. We learn from our past. I think one of the things that makes lived experience people so powerful is that we don't actually have as much room or privilege as others in terms of just going through life without thinking about what happened. We're constantly processing, healing, identifying triggers, moving forward, moving through in ways that others couldn't even really imagine because they don't have to do it. And so when I think about lived experience, I think about moving forward, but also the power that our experiences have in being able to support and identify how to move forward in a good way.
I fought to have an education. That's a privilege in and of itself that a lot of other survivors do not have. However, the real privilege there is not having to face this every day and being haunted by it. And so the past has taught me to be relentless and strong and never give up. And that makes me grateful for the past, even though I would not like to relive it. I am a survivor of child abuse, child sexual abuse, domestic violence, sexual violence, sex trafficking, and a resulting traumatic brain injury. I speak with and work closely with many people of narcissistic abuse. This is all similar. I mean, talk about a narcissist when you're going to talk about a pimp, eh?
There was actually studies. I was so curious. I did a little bit of research. There was a study done. I can't remember the name of it or anything, but there was a study done on a jail, and they had taken all of the folks that had been traffickers within a certain time period and had looked at their DSM-5 diagnostic high rate of them had some form, some version, some level of narcissistic personality disorder. Isn't that interesting?
When I started telling my story, at least not publicly on Instagram, may the fourth be with you, but when I started telling it to people around me, I said, they would say, your trauma is too much. Now I don't have a story to tell because you've lived through something and I haven't. And one of the things that many people can attest to, I said over and over again, it's the worst, and we're not judging here, but as an example, your parents got divorced. That's relative. If that was the horrible thing that happened in your life, it feels the same because pain is relative. You don't have to be as dramatic and sensationalized as me because I'm not here to be sensationalized. I'm here to tell you about what I've learned and tell you that all of our feelings are equal. The one thing I do get a hang up on is trafficking is a human rights violation and a very severe crime. When you're asking me, do I agree that all of these forms of trauma and abuse relate and I support all people from all walks of life? Yes, absolutely. But I suppose as a trafficking survivor, that is one part where I'm not trying to gatekeep, but I want people to realize it really is, if that makes sense.
Different. It's more complicated.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I've actually spoken with some folks who are really uncomfortable when I take different components of gender-based violence and relate it to human trafficking because they feel that it's completely different because it's so multifaceted. I think my intention in drawing those relationships is to show folks how complex it is.
Yeah.
It's not just, oh, it's human trafficking, which many people equate with like sexual violence or sexual exploitation. It's not just that. It's domestic violence, it's emotional violence, it's financial violence, it's spiritual violence, and the list goes on.
When I do my work with Statute Finder, I got hired as an intern. It's a chatbot that finds statutes to address what's happening to you. Raphael Tesai is a male survivor of domestic violence. And I think although I largely stand with women, this happens to everyone. It happens all around the world. And so we worked with introducing him to human trafficking because those are absolutely related to domestic violence. And one of the things I brought up was suicide because some people find there is no other way out, whether it's mental health, domestic violence, child abuse, exploitation, narcissistic, the list goes on, right? And I'm not here to gatekeep. I'm just here to help the best way I know how to.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. Yeah. When we think about your lived experiences, when we think about all of that, what was the turning point for you? What was the thing, the experience, the message that kind of just was like, all right, we're going to create some change in my life now?
The turning point for me was I went back and forth. Healing is not linear. I went ready to tell some people, then I went back from telling some people. I went to want to make a change, then I went back and got scared. I wanted to say my name, then I didn't. So a turning point wouldn't be exactly, but, and my husband, he gave me a safe jumping point, and I absolutely stand against saying that I needed to be saved, that someone saved me. It is not about finding a fairy tale, and nobody's relationship is a fairy tale, but it's about, I got a jumping point. I was like, okay, I can come back somewhere safe more. And then I got some friends and stuff, and I jumped from there, but I did the work. I put myself back together. I learned, I failed, and I did it when I was ready. Whenever you're ready, that's when you are. I don't think I can pinpoint it.
I like what you said about jumping point, and I want to just sit there for a second. Can you tell me what that is? What is a jumping point versus a turning point?
A trampoline. It might not be safe, but I'll always land. I got to shoot for the stars, hope for the moon, but I'm always going to come back where I know that I can be safe. And I think that is what is missing for so many victims and or survivors, overcomers, however they identify, is they don't have a safe place. When you don't have community, when you have people stigmatizing you, and this goes for domestic violence, child abuse, however this trauma happened to you, mental illness, addiction, whatever you are going through, when the world is against you and you feel you don't have the chance to explore, to try, to figure out, to aspire to something because you are so scared that you have no place to come back and land, even if you make a mistake. I love Miss Frizzle. Let's get messy, make mistakes. You know what I mean? You know, like be a normal field trip, kids. Like, you know? And I want part of this mentorship program or anything I'm doing is because I want other people to believe that. I want them to have that support that I didn't have, and I got it, and I'm lucky, and it's not fair that not everyone does.
Yeah. You talked a little bit about the stigma in this field for lived experience folks, and then, of course, the need for community social support when you're dealing with that, jumping off space or landing space, community. What are some of the things that you struggled with along the way in your early recovery and now in terms of professionalism, being in school, relationships, all those fun things?
Well, I was taught from the streets. So I used to speak differently, think differently. Everyone was an enemy. I didn't even remember my name. And this was the most significant thing for me. I forgot my name. So it's about me, voice for the silent, saying my real name is because I lost that. They erased my humanity.
They gave you a different name.
Many,
Yeah.
and I didn't even know who I am. And I'm finding my way back to that. That dissociation, that's an amazing point for everyone to hear actually in that way, is because like you can see me as, oh, I'm starting this nonprofit, or oh, I'm working with these people. But I even have moments like that where I dissociate and I forget because it's so painful, and it's okay. It's not linear. And that's why I think what people need to see and hear is I'm not perfect, but I'm someone, and you are too.
And when we think about mental health and dissociation and the trauma response and things like that, it's always so surprising to me that as lived experience experts, professionals, volunteers, advocates, we're expected to work in this field and act as if we are completely healed. We are not. There isn't a lot of space to say, hey, I'm struggling with dissociation. I have tons of stress going on right now. What I do really value, though, is that, as you also just demonstrated, despite the fact that we slide into these things symptomatically, dissociation might be one of them. I have a mood disorder, so I have some ups and downs. The ability to regulate. It's not about being perfect. It's not about it not being there. It's about learning how to manage it, learning how to bounce back faster each time, learning what we need to know to continue to recover and grow. And then we get the opportunity to share what we've learned with other folks who are in the process of learning.
And you know, I actually feel more brave to say the fact that I struggle with severe mental health. I do. But I didn't want to say that before because it was like, they're going to discredit me. You can't be a human rights legal professional. You can't speak for survivors. You can't help anyone because look at you. But look at how strong you and I both are, because we deal with these things and we persevere, and that deserves respect.
And on that note, I'll say I have multiple diagnoses that I've been blessed with over the last 20 years. But here's the thing, is that they're just labels.
Labels.
They're just there to tell me that my brain works differently. And then it's my job to figure out how my brain works and what my body needs so that they can work together to keep me stable. Yeah. It doesn't have to be all of who we are. It doesn't have to discredit us. I think what would discredit us is if we were not doing the work to regulate and we're using it as an excuse for poor behavior.
I started getting seizures with this traumatic brain injury, and I was put on a I can't drive list. And I was like, oh my God, people are going to think I'm like this, that, thing, the other. But it's like because of my brain injury. One of my really good friends is this American musician called Matt Sassano. He wrote a song for survivors of trafficking called Violated. And he continuously writes songs for the underdogs, for the defiant is what he calls it, because labels don't matter. Amen. Well, they matter to other people, but let's say no to the labels. We're our own person and we exist outside of what someone wants to call us.
I love that. I think that there's a lot of freedom in just letting people think what they want. That's been a huge lesson for me is, I'm going to own my labels and I am going to transform my life as a result of being aware of what those labels are and being able to work with them. But what I'm not going to do is let other people define my worth based on what they see on the outside. I define my worth. And sometimes that's difficult and sometimes there's struggles in doing so. But at the end of the day, nobody else outside of me is going to walk into the future with me. When I'm 80, I'm going to be sitting with me. Do I know how to look? Do I know how to accept her? Do I know how to stand in her power? Those are the only things that matter to me now. I spent so many years letting everybody else tell me if I was good enough and if I deserved a spot at the table and if I was healed enough and if I was smart enough and if I spoke well enough or used the right words or followed the right political or legal or bureaucratic process. And really, I just wanted to show up as a human.
I wanted to do family law at the beginning because of systemic issues and the child abuse. And then I was suggested criminal law, but like human rights, because I am a human. And people who go through narcissistic abuse, child abuse, exploitation, mental, the list goes on, but their humanity is being taken away from them. And I want to stand against it. And I always struggle with, can I sit at the table? Am I good enough? Can I be here? But the reality is that take it as it is or not. And there's power in just saying that. For every survivor of any type of abuse, whatever, it's just saying that you matter.
And one of the challenges, I think, in early recovery and even later on, as I've already disclosed in my own experience, but is that accepting, embracing, owning your value and your right to autonomy, your right to self-define, to self-determine, figuring out how to embrace your identity and reestablish it, really. Then there's mental health pieces. Now, with that, I would say from my experience, there's even like navigating the mental health system and getting them to properly support you as a huge freaking barrier. We can end up with 20 freaking diagnoses at the end of it because everybody wants to see you for half an hour and slap a label on you with no follow-up.
I felt like a guinea pig.
Yes.
And you know what was frustrating to me? I was diagnosed with some psychiatrist who said I had an anger disorder. Look, if I was abused, molested, child abused, this, that, thing, the other, trafficked, yeah, I'm angry. That's not even in the DSM, okay? But we're not going to get into technicalities. But yeah, I'm angry. But I own that now. I'm allowed to be angry, but I am not disrespectful, and there's a difference.
Yeah, we are entitled. We have a right to our emotions, but we also have a responsibility to manage them in ways that we're proud of. It's not even really about other people, but also acknowledging that emotion and acting on that emotion when necessary.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying because I built my platform originally on social media. I'll make mistakes. Sometimes I will get emotional and I'll be like, oh, shoot, should I have said that? Then I delete it. And I'm authentic and I'm learning. I'm learning as I go. And like I said, anyone who's been through any kind of something or witnessed it, had a friend, family member, or they're an officer or someone who witnesses people going through something. The goal isn't to be perfect, but is to be failing upwards or falling upwards. Yeah, I went through something, but I also have a lot what people don't have. I'm white, have an education. I didn't come from the worst of the worst. I've been through what people could think is the worst, but I'm not the perfect victim.
No. There is no such thing as the perfect victim. And I think that's a really important terminology for us to also be considering because it impacts us as advocates as well. Again, causing us to question our worthiness, our validity when we're not the perfect victim. But who decides who the perfect victim is and who gave them the right to?
Because of my psych undergrad or just like my lived experience, I feel like I do get a seat at the table to talk about this because if you think there is a perfect victim, you do not understand the psyche.
Yeah.
That is not a thing. And you as a social worker, yeah, I'm sure that you understand this just as much as I do. And I think it's really problematic when we start pitting each other against one another because there's no such thing as I'm better than you. And the more that I am involved in this work, it's not about getting the attention. It's about the fact that I've found a sense of community. And now that we're talking about it, this is like almost a therapy session. I've found people who support me and tell me it's okay and your message isn't bad. And I want to be part of this space, not to take up space, not to take it from anyone else, but just to be here for someone else who might want to come into this space too.
Powerful. Yes. Are there any other struggles that you want to mention when we're thinking about early recovery versus now? I know you've been doing some new work. You're leveling up in your advocacy journey. With great power comes great responsibility.
The whole thing about imposter syndrome is a big thing. Did I earn this? Am I being patted on the back like, oh, you cute kid? In terms of the things we're talking about with survivors, DV, abuse, human trafficking, I found what seems like to be a fairy tale. But if I'm being quite frank with you, I struggle with a hug sometimes or having someone touch me. I completely shut off. And that is scary. And I just want anyone out there to know that'll happen sometimes, but it doesn't have to break your relationship. And the important thing is not that, I got married or whatever. It's about the fact that I found myself. And there's so many ways for that to happen. It's not about that. It was about finding a way to let this not be my whole identity, drowning in survivor, victim. It's about me taking hold of my own life. And I want everyone to know that it's not about starting a nonprofit, becoming a legal professional, doing this. I'm not shiny, fancy, or better or worse than anyone else. It's about finding what gives you a purpose or a sense of agency. If you want like a little funny anecdote, I got made fun of in the strip clubs because everyone else wanted to play R&B and I would play like AC/DC and rock music all the time and whatever. And it's just who I am. And when I represent myself, I'm just being myself and I'm authentic. But now I have my own name. I respond to Leah. I like who I am. I'm not defined by what happened. I'm not a tokenized person. Sometimes losing makes you win. I have gone through so many failures, but I have overcome them. And that is the test of time, I guess. And not everyone has the advantages that I have had, but I want to make those available. And that's why I pledged on the last day of Human Trafficking Awareness Month 2025, I said, and I made a public statement, and I stand by this, that when I am a legal professional, 10% of my earnings will go to anti-human trafficking efforts, and I will make all of those records publicly available because this is how much I am serious about it.
Yeah. Yeah. Doing what gives you a sense of agency, that really stuck out for me. That was brilliant. What has helped you most in your recovery? I'm curious if there's other pieces there around therapy, medical support, a certain community, a certain type of program, maybe other professionals around you or certain opportunities.
For me, my voice being heard, because my name wasn't Leah Voice for the Silent on the Instagram when I started on May the 4th. Be with you. It was anonymous, something number. But I reached out to an organization who published my story. And then I got matched with other people and then I was heard.
What made you feel or believe that you were heard?
Because I felt powerless and like my story didn't matter and I was a statistic or I was a number or I was screaming into a void. But then this big organization said, I see you and I want other people to be seen. And that is my goal about this. And I don't know how to tell other people because every recovery journey is different. Every story is different. I can't tell you how to heal. I don't have all the answers. I'm just doing my best, and I think we all are. But even you make me feel seen, and I think we need to work on making sure that everyone feels seen. It doesn't have to be flashing lights or a big thing. Like freedom starts with a voice, and change starts when we listen.
I love that. That's beautiful. And that's your website? That's on your website?
Yeah, that's my slogan-ish thing. I have some shirts with that. When we listen to all the voices, that's when change starts. I'm not asking anyone to agree with me, but I'm staying true to myself, and that's what I believe.
Yeah. Your recovery journey led you to found Voice for the Silent. What was that journey like? When did you decide to do that? When did it start? Has it grown since it started? Let's just take some time to celebrate Voice for the Silent and let the audience know where you're going next.
Well, it started with someone listening to me. So I want people to listen to other people.
The domino effect.
Yeah. I'm not at the start of it. I'm not the end of it. But someone listened to me and I want someone to hear everyone else.
And so what are some of the things that you do through Voice for the Silent that creates that space for voice of others?
I created a private online community that aligns with the G100 goals, that it's very wellness, lived experience thing. It's about poetry, inspirational quotes, check-ins with wellness. I have a strict policy code about respect and not graphic disclosure, but we're focusing on safety, digital online safety. How are you doing today? What songs do you like? What books do you like? What inspires you? What makes you feel like you're enough? And I'm working on the mentorship program with other people But that's the point. It's a joint effort. I can't do this by myself. It's about hoping that together we can get somewhere farther.
Is there anything else that the organization is doing? Is there any way that folks can help the organization? Is there a website that you'd like to share?
This began with a petition and it started into a movement. I can't legally change the name of the petition because for everyone who signed it, that's not fair to change the fact that I've changed direction. So it's called Increasing Funding and Training for Toronto Police Service Anti-Human Trafficking Unit. But what it is about is a Canadian-wide push for bills to be passed. Bill S-210, Protecting Young Persons from Pornography Act. Bill C-270, Stopping Sexual Exploitation. Bill C-3 and Bill S-36, the National Strategy to End Human Trafficking, and just showing support that you care. And even if you weren't human trafficked, there are so many forms of exploitation. So that movement is what I believe in, and it is change.org/voice for the silent.
How can somebody contact you to do work with you? What is the route that they should take?
If they DM me on Instagram, Leah_voice for the silent.
So Instagram folks, Leah_voice for the silent. Please feel free to reach out to access the petition to sign and to get some advocacy support from Leah in one area or another. To support funding for different initiatives that she's doing, feel free to reach out to her and learn more about what those are. Now, what has helped you most in your professional journey, Leah?
The support of others. We have to work together. And I'm not trying to give a fluff message. That's the damn truth, eh? But remembering your own worth and other people telling me that, honestly, people who've done this work like you yourself longer than me, saying, remember who you are. Remember that if you disrupt something, good. You're doing something right in a way.
Yeah, changing the status quo. What advice would you give to organizations that are working with survivor leaders or lived experience folks?
Nobody's better than anyone else. They earn their spot to be there. And trauma informed, understanding that there might be a bad day, there might be a good day, but as long as they're respectful, they deserve to be there just as much, and just not to tokenize them or pity them. And everyone is at a different stage of their recovery, but it doesn't make them any more important or less important than anyone else.
What advice would you give to survivor leaders like myself or yourself?
I don't think I've been here long enough to get to say that. I'm not perfect. I'm a little child crying inside, but I think I'm brave enough, strong enough, good enough. I'm learning every single day, and that's what counts. Be teachable.
I love that.
See, you were qualified. Listen to that. You can be strong enough, good enough, and be teachable.
And what about for folks that are like still fairly early in their recovery journey, maybe just exiting or in the first year or two there? Is there a message of encouragement or guidance that you'd want to leave with them?
They can reach out to me because I know some cool police officers that they can trust. That's what's up with my mentorship program. I'm bridging that area.
Love that. And that's actually one of the most valuable pieces I feel about survivor leadership. It's something that other folks may not be able to identify as well. And that's who in this field actually is trauma informed, who in this field actually is safe, who in this field actually will provide you a service without making you feel like a victim or degraded as a taker with nothing to give. Because oftentimes we have establishments, organizations, services, what have you, that fall under different umbrellas of trauma informed or this or that. But then what makes the organization is the people. And sometimes there's people within those organizations that actually don't know enough about those values to be serving people through that lens or practicing the behaviors that can create that safety. So again, not to say that the organization's bad, not even to say that the person is bad. However, there are some people that are perfect. And we get to experience those people and then tell other survivors, this is a safe place based on relationship, not rhetoric and values.
They're well intentioned, but I do have that gap filled, and you need that trust. That's what I think I bring to the table in terms of that. And
I love that. I would love for you to give a shout out and spotlight somebody, either a lived experience person who's had an impact on your recovery or your professionalism, or a non-lived experience person that you feel is really invested in survivor leaders and deserves a shout out and deserves to be recognized for their work and their relationship building.
there's been many people, but I want to highlight Dina Unger. I had 32 followers when I was so scared to get a smoothie with her when she came down to Toronto. And all of a sudden, I skyrocketed to some people paying attention to me, whatever small support that is. But she was essential and in my recovery, my healing. And she is the founder, owner of Even For One. And she deserves all the respect in the world because she continuously cheers me on. And if it wasn't for her saying that you matter and I'm going to meet you with a smoothie and I'm going to introduce you to Julia Brum, Center to End Human Trafficking, I would not be where I am. And I owe everything. I worked hard, but I owe everything to Dina Unger. And she deserves to be heard too.
We have her as one of our podcast guests, so everyone will have the pleasure and the honor of hearing her story and the work that she does. She is determined. Yeah, she's a bulldozer, and it's great. It's great to see her being so supported as well in her work by folks that can offer resources and wisdom of a different nature that's necessary to be an entrepreneur, because we don't know it all. And having the right people to support us in the work and the ideas that we're doing and helping to move the work forward is so key. And I am so impressed by her follow through and her gumption. And this is new now to hear her impact on survivors in the community, I think is wonderful as well. This has been a great conversation with my sister's keeper, Leah McSpadden. We're happy to have had you with us today, and we hope to see you again in the future.
Thank you so much for having me here and taking the time.